For me doing this, we can even go back to the situation with ACP Hackshaw, where for years, because we did not have a system like this, it meant that many police officers, based on trying to be proactive, based on trying to assist in communities, they will receive items from different organizations, cash or candy, and then forward it back to whichever organization in that division community that they are trying to assist. It can be very untidy because this can cause the perception of corruption. It puts a lot of clouds as it pertains to accountability. And therein is the reason why we now would not have the situation of the concern we had before as it pertains to ACP Hackshaw and hundreds of other police officers and different departments that were forced to acquire goods and services through cash or kind from different arms of the private sector. Anyone who has a problem with the private sector assisting the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we know what their intention is. Because what we have seen now with the I Support Our Service, we now have a system of accountability. We can account for every single cent that is given to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, goods, services, kind, from any, for all these 140 plus merchants. And the reason for this now, as I said, we can now account for it and there can be no concern about corruption or perception of questionable activity by police officers in receipt of such items. Now, what is very interesting is that anyone who may have a concern about this, because they are fully aware that when you bring the private sector to work with the police service, to work with the public, the only persons that can be affected will be criminal elements. And we do know that there are organizations and individuals that work on behalf of criminal elements. This is done worldwide, where organizations, the private sector, would assist in donating items. And a number of different things they have provided for us, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. Many merchants have come on board in the most generous way. I wish to thank them, supplying masks, hand sanitizers, gloves, food hampers, PPE equipment for the police service, just to name a few. And even in the, during carnival season and other situations, they will provide sandwiches, coffee, water. The police officers in all 9 divisions, in spite of the virus, were able to distribute thousands of hampers to the less fortunate across the country. At Christmas, some of the merchants supplied toys, snacks, pizzas, and other items for children's home, bringing joy to hundreds of children. And people, they are questioning this and they want accountability for this. Well, we can give you accountability. As I said, over 140 merchants, we can account for every single cent, which means that now we have a system that works and we can account for it to prevent and to avoid questions that may have arisen years gone by. We wish to thank the number of the major supporters in the I Support Our Service, from Angostura, Mecca Industries Limited, Ansa Macal Group of Companies, Innovative Lighting, Caribbean Safety Products Limited, TCL Group of Companies, Daiwa Environmental, the Massey Group, Humans Hardware and Transport, and several other, dozens of other agencies. We wish to thank them, and this shows that we are accountable, and it shows as well that the private sector and the public is buying into the fact that they want to work with the police service, whereas other persons see the police service as the enemy because of their own intention, where all they will do is to discredit, attack, question the police service. What we are seeing now is the private sector buying into the fact that we are not the enemy and we intend to work for them and with them. I now move on to a matter as it pertains to the Freedom of Information Act. I will hand over to the head of legal, Mr. Chandler, just to clarify some matters here. Now, this here is a hot potato item. Very few politicians on either side will want to question the relevance or the concerns as it pertains to the Freedom of Information Act. As the Commissioner of Police, it is a law. We will adhere to the law. And it is a law that obviously is of value because it ensures public accountability. It ensures that we can account for all finances that are spent from the public purse, which is the value of it. So we understand the value. We understand the importance of accountability and the right of citizens to know public spending and the systems and to ensure it is not being abused. But unfortunately, this law is now being abused by other individuals at times, and it is being misdirected. I can give you examples. Someone can go and make a request for any public servant to find out what loan they took. They can look at the Freedom of Information to ask how much money someone received in allowances, where a person stationed in the public sector, They can ask for the performance report of individuals. And then after having made public, you can even look at the police service, where you can ask for persons if they required who got a firearm user's license. And this here can obviously affect the lives of citizens. It can put the risk, the safety of citizens in this country. It can also waste the time of the police service. So I was thinking more of the police service, because what we have seen is that this has turned into a fishing expedition by many persons, not designed for what it was meant for, to ensure public accountability and spending, but it was not designed to spy on persons, get inside information on public servants, to embarrass them, to be used in civil cases, or even on the media trying to just throw hundreds of questions to the police in the hope that something that they will catch something to find a story. The Ttps, this has greatly affected our productivity. I get several requests daily from Freedom of Information. It takes immense resources by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, many manpower hours, to turn the police service for us to try to move police officers from operational elements to go now to try to find data of the hundreds of different demands we get based on Freedom of Information. And I can give you simple examples. Someone asked for Freedom of Information. They would like to know all the police officers, where they were stationed, where they were posted, the names of the officers, what locations they were in during an event, a borough day. And that was because one female probably wanted to find out where her boyfriend was stationed if he really worked that day. That took a lot of manpower hours just to please an individual to ensure that her husband really worked that day. Is that what the Freedom of Information Act was based on? To try to take police manpower hours away from doing policing work to satisfy someone to make sure that her husband really worked that day. There can be a minor accident between two vehicles, and I will be bombarded with all of these accidents to have all the CCTV footage of all the cameras in several different areas. That will take immense police manpower hours again. And it has nothing to do with public accountability or public spending. It is someone who, you got a fender bender, and he or she wants to get police now to become a database to assist him or her in their personal matter as it pertains to a vehicle accident. It is used for civil matters, as I mentioned. So the Freedom of Information Act was not there to be used to assist someone in their own personal matter. The police, in other words, we are being used as a database to assist persons on personal matters or to help in civil cases, and not public accountability. This has also caused many citizens not to even come forward to give evidence or information to the police, because what happens is that every single question that is asked, they want to get all the extracts of the station diary. I don't know where else in the world this happens, but when there's a station diary and police write things in a station diary, that could possibly be used for evidence. That can affect the security of an individual. This will cause many citizens not to come forward and give evidence or give a report to the police, because they know someone can just ask and demand from using FOIA for the extracts of the station diary, which obviously can affect individuals. Asking the names of persons who have FULs. I mean, that obviously has to be dangerous. Asking for officers, where they were posted, where they were stationed, what's their rank, when they were enlisted. So, I mean, this has turned into a fishing expedition. Asking for persons who apply to be police officers. They fail a polygraph test. Through the FOIA, they're coming and demanding the results of the polygraph test. And the list goes on and on. My point is, when will it reach the level of being ridiculous? Is it going to reach the point that someone could easily now ask for all the information of all the height of every police officer? Let us ask for the religion of all police officers. Let us ask for who's married and who's not married, and what is their waist size. When would it be seen as being ridiculous? Mr. Christian Chandler will give the breakdown of Dennis Wren with a number of different questions, nothing aligned to each other. So any media reporter, thankfully, none of you all have done this other than Dennis Wren, but anyone could now ask dozens of questions and take numerous hours from the police service. I wish to advise the public who will just believe that, yes, it's the right of the police to do that. Because of the situation of COVID, officers being down, stations being closed, immense patrols needed, my officers now have to burn the midnight oil to adhere to the many demands, because, reality check, I don't have plasticine where I could just make police officers to do all of these things. So when people demand that I need to get 25,000 people apply for FULs, they all want it immediately. Persons asking for certificates of character. Persons want to get all the information based on freedom of information in the stipulated time, but yet they want my police officers, all of our police officers, to be out there on full patrol. This obviously is affecting the operational capability of the police service, and as I said, it is going on and on. I mean, so you could ask for the ethnic composition, the pay slips of officers, how many loans they got, where they are stationed, their dates of birth. When would it reach the point that enough is enough? If the Freedom of Information Act should not be used as an avenue for persons to help them with their personal agenda or their own personal business. It is to be used for finance and public accountability of public spending. It is being abused and it is affecting the operational capability of the police service. I'll ask Mr. Christian Chandler, the head of legal, to expand on this, please.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. The Freedom of Information Act. The Freedom of Information Act, the spirit of which is, as Commissioner just so clearly stated, is to make public authorities, public bodies accountable, to make them transparent. The object of the Act is set out at Section 3 of the Freedom of Information Act. It specifies and makes provisions for making available to the public information about the operation of public authorities, and in particular, ensuring that the authorizations, policies, rules and practices affecting members of the public in their dealings with public authorities are readily available to persons. It creates a general right of access to information in a documentary form, but it is limited only by the exceptions and exemptions necessary for the protection of essential public interests and the private and business affairs of persons in respect of whom information is collected and held by the public authorities. This is important for us to understand the spirit and the backdrop of the Act. The spirit and the backdrop of the Act is geared towards helping persons in terms of soliciting and eliciting pertinent and particular information. It is not geared towards personal agendas and persons who want to abuse the Freedom of Information Act. To that end, I want to point out that from 2018 to now, the exponential rise in requests made and demands placed upon the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service as a public authority. And I say that because I wonder if I could get just a chart to help show you all. It's a simple chart that shows, right, from this graph, you can see from 2018 the number of requests. So you have 1,693 requests in 2018. Thereafter, in 2019, 3,147. And to date, for only the 2 quarters, that is January to June, right? For this year, we have 1,710. These figures, so if I could turn your attention away from that now. So these figures are important because what has happened is the Ttps, under the guidance and the auspices of the Commissioner, has moved swiftly to becoming more timous in their disclosure of information, more transparent. And I suppose I dare say that that is much to our demise, because it seems as though the more information that we have provided and the more transparent we have become, the more information and demands that are made of us. And that is reflected in that graph. Because what you see is from 2018, when the Commissioner would have taken office, to 2019, you can see the drastic increase, almost double the amount of requests. And this year, the trend continues to what we have this year. So that the TPS is inundated with freedom of information requests. And it does take away from the ability to do good work, because who is supposed to collate the information? Right? We need officers themselves to go and collate the information. And we also need to get resources. So there's a serious increase in terms of now having to produce the information requested, because we try to be forthcoming and as helpful as possible by virtue of the spirit of the Act. Further to that, we must understand the process that it involves. The process is one where the request comes to the attention of the Commissioner of Police as the head of the public authority, the TTPS. He then forwards it to now the legal department who deals with it. The Act provides for a person to deal with and make a decision on the request. So the information is then requested. We don't have the information in our department. We then need to send out to the requisite division, branch, section, wherever the information is, to get the information. Thereafter, once the information comes in, a decision is made. Now let us understand the time and the timelines that are involved. And what we see is that the Act is very sharp in the timelines. 30 days is clearly insufficient for us to provide the requisite information. So I want to start with one. I would like to champion and push the call again for the legislators to look at revisiting the timelines under the Freedom of Information Act. 30 days is clearly not enough. 90 days perhaps may be much more, it would be easier to go through the process and produce the requisite information. But certainly 30 days is too stringent of a timeline. So I want to again call upon the legislators to look at the timelines and look at that as an amendment to the Act, because we clearly are failing. And why? Because what I see is a myriad of judicial review actions filed by and specific chambers, specific attorneys over and over and over and over and over and over again. How is it that people know specifically to go to these law chambers, to these attorneys? I really don't know. But somehow they seem to get all these requests in, and they are only too happy at the expiration of the 30 days to file for judicial review, which then costs the TTPS and taxpayers money and costs. So these things we try to avoid and to avert, but there's only so much we can do, because what happens is that sometimes you get a request that is ridiculous in its size, in the amount of requests. So sometimes what a person may do is they may make one request, but the request has a myriad of different documents that they're asking for. So they may ask for photographs, for reports, for statements, for entries in certain registers. So it's a host of things that are being asked for under one request, but it's not one request. Several requests are being made in that one request. And then I want to go now to the matter at hand. I know that a lot of people are curious because the Express would have gleefully and joyfully posted the judgment in that particular matter. Now that it's done and dusted, there's still the avenue and the option on the issue of an appeal to be filed. But nonetheless, the request made by Denise Wren in that particular matter, it set out and it asks for at least 9 different things, and all of which are, I would say, very exhaustive. It sets out at the first page the amount of money is donated to the ISS fund since its inception to present, the number of firearm licenses granted from August 2018 to present, to which sector of society, what mechanisms are being used to identify which retired police officers returned to the TTPS, the list of names of former police officers retained by the TTPS and the positions they now hold in the TTPS from August 2018 to present, the collective salaries of the above to the TTPS, names of former Defense Force personnel now attached to the TTPS and their ranks within the TTPS, also the remuneration packages and positions, names of contractors, suppliers retained by the TTPS from August 2018 to present and the cost of their services, list of all advertisements by the TTPS for the procurement of goods, services from August 2018 to present, and the names of all private external attorneys retained by the TPS to attend to civil matters, cost individual of such retention from August 2018 to present. So, point is, what we have is a myriad of requests, which are no easy task to collate such information and for it to come in a timely manner. But we did, in this particular matter, respond to it. But what we can see is from this, and the reason I want to talk about it is because the judgment has already been handed down, and from that, in my opinion, quite humbly, might I advance that that opinion, that judgment seems to be going towards the direction of expanding the law. It seems to be helping that particular case. Because from what I see, from what they filed, and based on what the judgment had alluded to, two different things. And apart from that, when I say the expansion, the Act at section 13, subsection 2, outlines that only reasonable steps should be taken in the processing of a request, and that only reasonable steps should be taken to assist in making the request to comply with it. The essence of that is, what is reasonable? How do we find reasonable? Now, there are many matters that have gone before with this relative to freedom of information requests. And the Court of Appeal in 2008 would have set down a particular judgment, and I think that is very instructive and helpful. And we in the legal department would have used that to guide us in our response, and we do use those as guides and guidelines in conjunction with the Act. So that the concern expansion makes it difficult, because what we see is a shift, right? The goalpost is constantly being shifted for the Ttps in terms of dealing with some of these requests. So at what point do we draw the line? Where are matters exempted? What is exempt? Because you have things that require, for instance, you have certain challenges. You have third-party information that I alluded to that may be exempt. You can't just disclose a third party's information. So what you have to do perhaps is write to them and ask them if they have any objection with the disclosure of the information. And that in itself takes time. Time which falls within that 30 days, might I add. And apart from that, the next issue is that they may not be willing to disclose that information. So if they're not willing to disclose that information, what happens then? These are areas that are uncharted. And the law in itself needs to be developed. And I think that it is high time that the law is revisited relative to the Freedom of Information Act. Because it cannot be that persons will constantly and continuously use the Freedom of Information Act as an avenue to solicit information, whether it is for an ulterior motive or for mischief. Because even in this particular Freedom of Information request that I see, the majority of it, so parts of it were submitted and parts weren't. They were found to be exempted. Now, what we need to consider under the Act, there's a particular section, section 35, that deals with the public's interest, so that if it is that a public authority finds a particular request to be exempted, they must go and consider the public's interest. And that public interest, we must consider, well, what is the benefit to the public that we're talking about here? And this benefit seems to be constantly expanded, as I see it, in some of these matters, so that we will be treating with this in moving forward. Commissioner.
Thank you very much. And again, just to clarify, if you notice the questions by Dennis Wren, everything's from August 2018. She has no interest of anything as it pertains to all of these matters before my term in office. So you see exactly what is going on, what is the agenda, what is the plan. And that is fair enough. She has her job, she's working for whoever. I know who I'm working for, and as the law-abiding citizens of this country. But when you look at what Mr. Chandler spoke about, you're looking here of almost 10 requests per day, every day of the year for freedom of information. When you look at 10, minimum, I will require sometimes 3 to even 5 police officers to go research, extract information, get CCTV footage, station diary extract, get information and data, not for public interest or public accountability, but because of your personal agenda, because you have some civil action on someone, you want to find out if your boyfriend or your husband was working that day, or wife, or you have a matter that you want to try to build a story on. And when this happens, we are speaking about 3 to 5 officers for every single report, and we get 10 reports a day. This means every month I lose over 7,000 plus manpower hours that could have been used with these 7,000 plus manpower hours being out with police officers out there doing real policing work. Imagine those 7,000 plus police hours. If just one of those hours we lost, a police officer could have been at a certain place, at a certain location that could have stopped a rape, a murder, or any serious crime. But he had to get back in to do research because someone decided to abuse a law conveniently for their own agenda based on personal, financial, malicious interests rather than about public accountability. And that is my point. Because the people who will, sometimes we are very simple. We'll say, just give the people the right. The date affects you. It affects your security. It affects your loved one. Then you will understand why we are bringing this up. Because when I lose over 7,000 plus manpower hours every single month in trying to do research on very simple matters that really has nothing to do with public interest or accountability and checking the taxpayers' purse, but it's based on someone using the FOIA as a personal agenda, then you will understand why I've opened this Pandora's box. Before we move on to the crime statistics, I would just like to make mention again. We know the Trinidad and Tobago Express, they hate the police campaign. There was an article that was put the big question: do you think the police could be more proactive in dealing with domestic violence cases? Now this is interesting that the Trinidad and Tobago Express, this is the point as it pertains to domestic violence. This by the Express as per norm, that comment and that question is the usual old-time colonial concept. I wouldn't be surprised if, heaven forbid, if the Trinidad Night Riders lose tomorrow, the Express or Matilda might blame the police service for it. Because every single thing that comes under the sun, the Express finds a way to blame the police service. So hopefully we would not lose. If we do lose, Matilda might put a front page, blame the police. Do you think the police could have done more to ensure that the Night Riders could have defeated the Zooks tomorrow? I will stand by for my defense of that and hope that the police will not be blamed for that as well, thanks to the Express. But the point being is that as we go to domestic violence, the question they ask is the police doing enough? So the Express in their little world believe that the be-all and end-all to stop domestic violence is about the police, so the police alone must be monitored. You notice they did not ask the question, is the media doing enough? Are the victims being advised and empowered to report it enough? Are the NGOs, have they been doing enough? The several government arms, such as social development, social services, are they doing enough? Is the family doing enough? The friends, the employees, or the neighbors, are they doing enough? As what happens, as we have seen, many of them, family members, friends, employees, neighbors, they always know about domestic violence and they say nothing, they do nothing. And have we asked the question, are they doing enough? Until the event, unfortunately, ends in death. Is the criminal justice system doing enough? But no. All that the Express could see is to ask the question, is the police doing enough? And the fact is that all the organizations I mentioned, all of these have a very big part to play to prevent or minimize domestic violence. Yet, the Express and others, they see it as a police matter. So to educate the Express and those who obviously don't read, we have for the first time trained specific officers to deal with this type of crime. We have now established a gender-based violence unit where there have been over 200 arrests, over 250 persons charged, and numerous interventions that took place to prevent such situations being escalated. Hence, lives were saved. We are now monitoring, having a proper registry and file and monitor and database in offenders. We are forming the sexual offences unit. What we are doing now is what, again, no politician has ever ventured to do. We have realized in the police service, our research, many persons are affected, they are assaulted through domestic violence and sexual offences, and they go to a private or public institution, and it is not mandatory, it is not a law, it is not a crime or enforced that these persons, when individuals come to them, that it must be mandatory for these medical practitioners to bring forward these reports to the police. So in other words, you hit your wife, you beat someone, someone is raped, they can't just go and be dealt with medically and then it dies a quiet death. We are drafting a request to send to the relevant officials, make it mandatory for all persons, all medical practitioners in the private or the public sector, that if it is that anyone comes forward based on any aspect that they believe is based on assault, based on domestic violence or sexual offenses, it is mandatory you bring the report to us. That is how we can make sure that the offenders will not be hidden, based on even the victim herself or himself being reluctant to pass forward the information. We have gone forward with enforcing and arresting those who have breached restraining orders. And again, with persons before being fearful to report because they went to a station before. Because we have a gender-based violence unit, we are now going to your home. This ensures confidentiality and to eliminate that perception and concern that persons will have of fear. So you ask what we are doing? Well, that is the answer. But as I said, some feel that it is a police problem, and the police can only get involved if we are told, if we are briefed, if neighbors, employees, family, friends, if they know something, say something. We are not fortune tellers. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we do not have a crystal ball. Most of the 40-odd persons killed this year by domestic violence, very few, if any, report was given to the police prior to the fatal day. So how could the police have intervened in something when everybody around the area would have known? They did not report it, they did not tell the police, but when it happens, you blame the police. And then after the death, as I said, everyone jumps on saying they knew about it. And there's another situation, just like as I report about those persons when we hold them with firearms and because we have a flawed criminal justice system, we have, again, the few times we've been able to get a preemptive strike by those people who report individuals who have become perpetrators and offenders from domestic violence. Some of them get bail in hours. There's a low sentence, if any. And let me not go about that protection order. This protection order at times even tells the offender you must not hit the individual, but you can still live with the individual. And so the victim is now forced to go back to the home to either be attacked again or be killed, or she is forced to leave the home and then leave her children, and then sometimes she's now forced to get back there because she wants to be with her children. My concept of it is the person who is the offender should be removed from the home. So we are doing all that we can, but to try to point fingers at the police service, I have just shown all that we are doing. The people should ask, what are the others doing? The police service must not be used as a band-aid and a fall guy towards a major national problem. I hope the Express could understand what I said, and I expect a letter to the editor or editorial to try to defend things that they cannot defend. I now move to something that is of relevance to the country, which has to do with crime statistics. On this, who does not on rundown? On many occasions, persons try to measure police service based solely on crime statistics. They do not look at all of the things that we have done, what we have achieved, increase in public trust and confidence, the image of the police service, our professionalism, dedication to duty. That is not seen. All that they speak about is the crime statistics. Even though on many occasions, the crime statistics would give a false impression on the performance of the police because many things will be outside of the control of the police service, as I mentioned, the criminal justice system and so forth. But this is an update of the crime statistics of Trinidad and Tobago at this time. Okay, good. Okay, that's not the crime statistic. Total violent crime. What we are doing is a comparison of last year to this year. So the total comparison of violent crime, if you notice, 2019, 3,583, in comparison to this year, 2,329, a decrease of violent crime by 35%. Murders, comparison of last year to this year, last year at the same time, 365, this year, 284. A decrease of 22% in murders this year in comparison to the same last year. Total woundings and shootings, 485 last year, this time 326 this year, a decrease of 33%. Total rape, incest, and other sexual offenses, 618 last year, 385 this year, a decrease of 38%. Total kidnapping, Comparison 112 to 61 this year, a decrease of 46%. Total kidnapping for ransom, 13 last year, 4 this year, decrease of 69%. Total robberies, 1,971 last year, compared to the same period this year, 1,257, a decrease of 36%. Total assaults, 10,798 last year to 7,047 this year, a decrease of 35%. White-collar crime, because of the establishment of our white-collar crime unit, where we have now amalgamated different units to work together and using technology and other systems through the ACIB, the fraud, the cybercrime, and FIB working together. Fraud, there's now a decrease of white-collar crime from 416 to 195, a decrease of 53%. Now, before I hand over to DCP Ford, we know that this, yeah, you can turn it off, please. We know that one thing for sure, because of social media, everyone is a media expert. Not you all are the experts. I'm speaking about social media. They know what should be done. They are police experts. They are criminologists. They are the best politicians, because everyone is an expert on everything because of social media. So the first thing the smart people will say is that the reason this has taken place is because of COVID. So the interest of that is that, unlike their false, mischievous, misleading, because some people love to see the glass half empty. They love excuses. There's something in social media, there's something called the "but what about" posse. When you say something good, they will say, "but what about?" Because they can't say anything bad about it, because our country lives on negativity, hatred, bitterness. And what I am trying to bring, and the police service, is a degree of hope, making people realize that we can change, and we are changing. So they will speak about COVID being something that has caused crime to go down. But just to educate those who obviously, the lights are on but there's no one home, because they don't understand what they are saying, the COVID pandemic, when there's a situation like this would increase crime. Because when you have a situation like this, you will have unemployment. When you have unemployment, it means that people will have no money. When the loss of jobs, it will cause greater sense of persons involved in robberies. It will cause inflation. It will cause health issues. It will cause confrontation. It will cause persons remaining home and to increase domestic violence. It would, again, with persons being frustrated. So all of the nonsense people try to say that because of COVID, that will cause crime to decrease. It is just the opposite. And I can give examples. The comparison of change in the murder rate in most cities in North America. Milwaukee, 53 last year to 106 this year, 100% decrease. Chicago, 308 last year to 49 this year, 43%. Kansas City, 91 last year to 127 this year, 40%. So I guess these cities didn't understand the experts that we have in social media who say that they missed the memo. These cities and the murderers, the people who rape, rob, in all of these cities around the world, they missed the memo by the experts in Trinidad and Tobago social media that says because of COVID that crime is supposed to go down. New York City, 181 last year, 235 this year, 30% increase. Philadelphia, 201 to 262, a 30% increase. Los Angeles, 172 to 193, a 12% increase. And the list goes on. And that includes shooting, confrontation with police officers, arrests, assaults, murders, looting, violence. You've seen it all over the world. And the COVID pandemic has proven to be something that has increased crime because of frustration, persons losing their job, health issues, and again, because persons, if they are frustrated and they cannot be involved in extracurricular activities, burning their energy, they will use it in a negative manner. So that is just to clarify all the born-again criminologists on social media that will state that the reduction of this has to do with COVID. I've just given you some examples. I will now ask the DCP operation, Mr. Ford, to address us.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And Trinidad and Tobago, again, good afternoon to all of you. Now, the Commissioner stood there a while ago and clearly showed a marked decrease by as much as a third in the major crimes where we have our 7 pillar crimes: for murders, woundings, shootings, kidnappings, robberies. And it showed that we have a reduction by about 1/3 of crimes. Pair that with the international standard of detection is 35%, and we are just at 35%, aiming nationally within Trinidad and Tobago for a 40% detection rate. The Commissioner asked me to speak today as to what in the TTPS's opinion could have contributed to this reduction, this great massive reduction that we have. And we can look at many things. I want to touch on just 6 key points, and I'm sure that you all can add to these 6. First, I want to touch on what I refer to as visionary leadership. And that leadership was espoused by the Commissioner, his executive, and all the divisional commanders that met earlier this year and made that commitment to continue to make Trinidad and Tobago a safer place for all of us to live in. Key also in that meeting was the synchronization and the alignment of departments within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And the Commissioner has spoken about that before, where we have certain departments, for example, the White Collar Division, Criminal Division, all under the umbrella of a Deputy Commissioner and an Assistant Commissioner to have an ease of the transfer of information, knowledge, and evidence as it relates to our investigative capacity. We also had a commitment to the delivery of high or consistent high-quality service. And what we saw coming together this year, started last year, we had the embryonic stages before, but this year saw it really taking off, where we had a combination of collaboration between the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the Trinidad and Tobago Customs, the Immigration Department, the Municipal Policing Department, the SSA, the Strategic Services Agency, and very, very important, the public partnered with us. Many of the successes that we speak to and speak about today and that we have spoken about before would not have been possible if members of the public did not have that confidence and belief in us to call and share information with us. And what was pertinent is the quick response that took place after the sharing of that information. The confidence continues to grow, and I'm here to say that with all that we have done, we could not have done it without you, the members of the Trinidad and Tobago public. Number 4, key again was the embracing and the utilization of modern technologies. We have the reporting app. We have the formation of the Cyber and Social Crime Unit. We have all these technologies that are coming on stream that the police service has embraced and continued to use, all with one goal in mind, to make Trinidad and Tobago a safer place for all of us. And whilst I've touched on all those, number 5, very important, and it cannot be discounted. Plain, old-fashioned, hard, back-breaking work. We have been going from since last year. We had elections. We had carnival. We have crime. We have COVID. We had elections. And we continue to see a turnout of 90+% officers who are dedicated, hardworking, and coming every day to give back to this population. But number 6, and very important, feedback. We have conducted different polls, and we have listened to what you have to say. Are we perfect? No, we are not. Do we make mistakes? Of course we do. But the feedback that comes to us in a timely manner, we have acted upon that feedback, and you can see the results. Generally, the population of Trinidad and Tobago feel a sense of safety and security today, much more than they felt years before. That augurs well for us going forward together, and I am confident that once we continue to partner as we have partnered, we will see the successes that we have been experiencing, and our aim is to surpass those successes. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before we open questions to the media, again, as it pertains to the Officer of the Week, again, I thank the media that you have taken this seriously, because many people, as I said, we believe that bad news sells. There's good news. There's a fact that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the men and women out there for the last year plus, from local government election into Christmas, into Carnival, into dealing with COVID pandemic, into a situation with hundreds of persons trying to destroy Port of Spain via looting and their plans to affect our democracy, going into the general election. These men and women have stood up there and defended this country. They have done so with pride. And very few times you have even heard from anyone of substance to tell the police service, to tell the officers and men out there, thank you. What you will get is negativity, attacks, questions, because we are the bad ones. Had it not been for the officers in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, in any of those things I mentioned, if they did like many other police services abroad, where they became arrogant, they abused their authority, they walked out, they went absent, we did not. They stood up, they stood proud. And sometimes just a little bit of recognition goes a long way. So if it is that others do not want to do it, I would continue to do it. So the Officer of the Week this week, PC Daniel Burris, who works in the Northern Division. He was assigned to the La Joqueta South Government Primary School on August the 10th, election day. He stepped forward to assist an elderly gentleman who was having great difficulty in getting to his designated polling station. He also needed to use the washroom urgently. So PC Burris picked up the gentleman and carried him in his arms. Persons who were in the polling station applauded PC Burris. Today, on behalf of the executive of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and on my own behalf, I present PC Burris with this award as the Officer of the Week. Well done. Okay, now open questions, media.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Nicholas Lachman Singh from TV6. Commissioner, you want the questions as a group of questions or one after each other?
Hit it as group, go ahead.
All right, so Commissioner, are you saying that the police officers will no longer be taking money, albeit for good causes or good reasons, into their own accounts? And if a red flag is raised now concerning suspicious funds in a TPS member's account, would it be investigated thoroughly?
Yeah, definitely. All investigations, if there's somebody that is red flagged by the FIU, if there's a concern through any of our intelligence agencies or our white-collar crime units, they would be investigated. But that is the point. By us having a system now that we did not have before, it is going to minimize or even eliminate that possibility. I do not want organizations giving funds directly to police officers in cash or kind. It can cause that element of possible corruption. And that is why we have this system now where it is structured. All organizations who would like to be part of this, I ask them, do not forward anything directly to any police officer. You can forward it direct through the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, through I Support Our Service, so we can have accountability for everything that we receive.
Okay, so you've given reasons as to how the FIOA can be abused, right? Are you going to fulfill the order made by the court on the request made by Denise Wren to TTPS?
Well, again, there are some things that that can be handled. We are actually, my legal team, they are actually looking at it. But I do not want to get involved too much. The court has made a decision on this, and we are looking at our options. My point again is that, as I mentioned, look at all those questions she asked. It was a fishing expedition. There was nothing to specify. So when the public, I did this deliberately to show to the public, this was not concerned by some citizens out there who said, listen, I believe there's some degree of corruption, there's some concern, and I applaud that if that's what the FOIA was formed for, but not for a fishing expedition for you just to ask hundreds of different questions in the hope that something will catch.
All right, so you said these requests made under the Freedom of Information Act, they're being abused. Could this be remedied, and the TPS is being burdened by these requests? Could this be remedied by there being more human resources dedicated to investigating requests?
Well, again, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service don't have plasticine. So whereas what I'm trying to do is that in the 21st century policing, I do not want police officers behind a desk in administrative work. I need my officers out there. Situations like this, nowhere else in the world will we see this, that you're asking the police service, you need to give me all of the data of all the CCTVs in the last month in an area. You need to give me all the station diary reports. You need to give me all the information you have on an accident that took place with me. That is not what no police service in the world does that. Only here in Trinidad and Tobago, because they're using the FOIA as an avenue because we are part of public service. And therein lies the problem.
Okay. Commissioner, last week the media went through the gauntlet of your evaluation to become Commissioner of Police. When is the media going to have the opportunity to go through your appraisal? Is it something that you can do, or is it that we have to make a request to the Police Service Commission to do so?
No, but that was said. That was also shown at that press conference.
The appraisal?
Yes.
Okay, that was done this year?
Yes. No, sorry. This was 2018 to 2019. Oh,
Okay.
you mean this year?
Yeah.
It's now being completed by the PSC.
Okay, when that is revealed to us, it will be given to the same exposure to see
Yes,
how
I am nothing to hide. I'm really good at what I do. So
Okay.
I'll be more than willing to show it to you.
All right. So over the weekend, we apparently there was a party at Bayshore where persons were warned and not charged. Is it a case of public versus private, saying that they were on a private compound, or is there a different law for different classes in the country, poor versus rich? What is happening? Why were they warned and not charged?
Yeah,
Explain to
definitely.
us.
Well, you know, definitely not on my watch. You have seen, I have led operations in Regents Gardens, in Valsine Park, in Goodwood Park, in what you call high-profile areas in Togonas. So that is relevant to me, and I will stick to that for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And you know what is very interesting is that this was a situation and the individuals were warned. I don't know, Mr. Ford, you have anything to be involved in this, or Mr. Chandler, because just something I just want to mention. Many times people look at race, they look at color, they look at political party cards. We do not look at it in that manner. So this becomes something of substance. But you know what was interesting is that they're saying that these individuals should all have been arrested because they were held. But there was a certain Gary Griffith that there were 27 persons that I held in silos. And I warned them, and all of them they let go, and that was not a problem then. Just about a month and a half ago, 17 persons were swimming at the bay next to Bayside from Sealots, from Caranage, from St. James, and none of them were arrested, and that was not an issue. Now, the same thing that took place in Sealots and next to Bayside is done here, but that becomes an issue. Sometimes we need to stop looking at race and just look at logic. Let's look at common sense. Now, as it pertains to this matter, let me clarify. This is a very sticky situation. What I've seen in the Express, when the Express spoke about public place, this was not a public place. So the law is a it's a public place. So if you have your home and private property, the police have to be very careful. So in this situation, this was a gated community, and it was so my point is, suppose 20 persons in a gated community all decide to go to the pool at the same time. Is the police supposed to clear the first 5 who arrived and arrest the other 15? It is very difficult in this situation, which is why it is, as Minister Dayal and others have stated, people need to be professional, mature, such as the landlords, which they did the right thing because they spoke to the individuals, they refused to listen, the police then went in there. And what I've been told in my initial investigation, because we're still investigating this is not over yet, I have been told that the individual was very arrogant, refused it because they were trained that this is private property, you can't tell us what to do. However, many of the individuals, not speaking English as well, they were there and they were not members of that community. So they were invited. So if you decide I'm in a gated community and I could invite 20 friends and then go by the pool, how can the police deal with this situation because of how the law is at this time? Now, there's a difference with private property, a private place, a common area. So you have my home is my private property in my apartment, but the car park, gym, the pool, that's a common area, but not public place. So it is a very technical situation. My concern here is that this situation, what I have seen, is that many of those persons were not residents of that gated community. Anything?
Well, just to add, Commissioner, because you hit the nail on the head, and the fact of the matter is that we must distinguish between the public and the private space, because the law caters for the public space. When you look at Section 3, when you look at Section 4, that talks about being about your water and that sort of thing. Because in that article, right, people ask the question, and they put it out there that, look, is there a law for people of a certain race or a certain class? And that is not so. The Commissioner will have stated that we enforce the law to the letter of the law. Right? And once reports are still coming in, the majority of the people there that we understand it, that were gathered there, were a mixture of residents and persons invited. As well as in that article, they would have spoken about some time before when someone was bathing, some persons were bathing in the actual sea outside of the beachside towers. Now, that in itself is captured by the public regulations, right? Because that's a public space. But in there, in the common area, in those communal areas, there's nothing that deals with it within the ambit of the law. And we must understand that what needs to happen is a correlation between the law and perhaps landlords, because Commissioner was reasonably pointing, I thought he was going there. Landlords, perhaps instances such as this, may want to institute perhaps temporary covenants or some covenant and look at the covenants that they have, that the parties who would have signed, whether it's a deed of lease, an actual outright purchase, or if it's a rental agreement, whatever the case is, we need to revisit and come up with rules and regulations that restrict how persons or parties privately use the property. And I think if we do that, and if that is what is needed, then the person, so if it's beside the management committee, because in a community, in a gated community, you will have some form of management in place. So it is for them to go and look at what they have in place and not leave it on the back of the police all the time and blaming the police, well, all they do nothing, all they do nothing. It's not that. It's what the police can do, because we have to operate within the arms of the law.
Yeah, and again, to re-emphasize, in this situation, sometimes what we've seen is that landlords and some of these gated communities, they actually shut down their pools to prevent just this. So this way it is, we really look forward towards the support of landlords and other persons playing their part. Because there are things that I can do. Now, if it is you have a private home and you decide to have a party, it's your private property. But the police may very well decide to call EMA. If it is a noise abuse, we can probably have roadblocks. When you this is not entrapment, these things happen. We can actually do DUI testing. So these things we can do. But this situation, it is very difficult. So this was not a case of police not being involved, not charging because of the ethnic composition of individuals. Because as I said, this was private property, but there was no concern of the same people who were saying that when it is that we cleared all the persons when they were swimming in public place in sea lots and next to Bayside, and no charges were laid, and that was not an issue then.
Commissioner or Mr. Chandler, could you define the difference between common place and public place for us, please?
Well, it depends on, it would depend, Johnson, on what you're speaking about, because it would be defined perhaps in terms of the public health regulations. That would be set out in the public health regulations. So if you look at Section 3 of the public health regulations, it would define what they consider a public space, as opposed to, say, a different act. Let's say, for instance, the Road Traffic Act, that would set out a public space distinctly and separate and apart. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so and again, to clarify, to assist, you have a gated community. My apartment is my private property. I could control who comes in, who comes out, so I'm responsible. But if you have a gym or the car park, it becomes common in that many persons in that community, in that residential area, have access to it. If everybody decides to go there at the same time, we now can have a concern pertaining to the pandemic, because everybody has access to that car park or that gym or that swimming pool, which is what it could very well happen in a gated community. If 20 or 30 persons all decide to go at the same pool at the same time and they feel it is their right because they are residents there, it is now going to defeat the purpose of the law that was made. But it is difficult for the police to intervene because it is private property.
Now, staying on that topic for a little bit, if not last week, the week before, I think it was the week before, there was supposed to have been a private zest on the 29th of August. I remember Mr. Ford speaking about it afterwards and getting some information pertaining to that. Looking at this situation now, is it safe to say that if you are having a private zest at your home, and it's allowed even with all these COVID restrictions? Given that your home is a private place, not a public place, and the law...
I would advise us, let us not go down that road. If people decide to abuse the position that the police will be placed in, it is going to defeat all the good that is being done by the laws. This is where common sense kicks in, which is, again, going back to the situation with the landlord. The landlord was trying to persuade the individual or individuals who, through the party, did not listen, so they brought in the police. The police, we can't abuse our authority. I have to be very clear and adhere to the law. If someone has private property, now again, you can't have a private property and through a party where persons have a cover charge. Now it now becomes public place, a public space. So you can't have an open house where you have alcohol being sold, consumed, the level of the noise, persons paying at a cover charge. It no longer now becomes private property because now you're actually charging members of the public to enter. If you have your own private event that you have invited individuals, it can make it difficult. I do not want this to be used as an opportunity for persons to say, aha, so that's what we can do. This is where common sense and maturity needs to step in for persons to understand the bigger picture. Whole strain, you will get to have your zest party soon enough.
And Commissioner,
unfortunately.
If I could just add, because what I want to do is to in terms of dissuading people, because what the Commissioner doing is trying to really ensure that persons don't take this out of context. And let's understand, because we would have spoken about this earlier o'clock in terms of what the law provides. And under the Public Health Ordinance, I refer to a particular section that allowed the police to go into a place, right, to save lives and that sort of thing, when we spoke about that. And I want to go back to that, because what you don't want is that what you may have a private event and you may have people over. If it is that you're overdoing it or you have ridiculous amounts of people and someone calls the police and make a report and they come there, don't talk about they don't have a warrant and that sort of thing, because at that point in time you're breaching the regulations, and under the public health regulations they wouldn't need any warrant to come into your house. So you don't want the police to be going and coming into your home without a warrant, and you feel as though your rights are being trampled upon. Let's not have that sort of conversation.
Again, unfortunately, Commissioner, you said you don't want to go down that road. We done down that road already, about 95%.
What you just spoke about, when we were able to get access because the landlord gave us authorization and brought us in to the fold. So it becomes a very ticklish situation.
Now, given what Mr. Chandler just said, what you are saying effectively is that it is illegal to have a private zest without a cover charge.
Well, you see that there are different situations. Again, as I said, if you have your private property and persons are with a cover charge, the police, we can very well get involved. Don't test the system. Do not test the police. Just do
with
the right
a cover charge. Without a cover charge, it's okay.
No, they will still, sorry.
Commissioner, is it worth dispersing crimes ultimately saving lives?
Correct, and that's what Mr. Chandler just said. So it's all based on the situation. If somebody has 7 persons in your house and you have a zest party with 7 persons and it's your private property, I'm not going to tell the police every time there are more than 5 persons in a house, we're going to raid the house to save lives. It's all going to be based on the scenario, based on the intelligence we have, based on the situation, based on the size of the premises. So there are a number of different things. My point being is, let us not try to be technical and nitpick. Just do not do it.
Well, Commissioner, ultimately, they were warned several times, according to the reports. And they still continue. There's even footage of them going into the night, partying, or whatever it was they were doing, twerking, whatever it was. And they seem to have ignored the police officers' warnings. Wasn't it at that point, in the interest of saving lives, wouldn't someone should have suffered consequences?
Not necessarily. Again, I do not have the details of what happened, We do not know if it is that they dispersed, that it remained in small numbers and pockets, if it is that the landlord gave clearance, if it is that there were persons who were residents remained there. So I don't have all the details. But again, I am thoroughly investigating this matter, so this is not over as yet.
How long again before this investigation is completed?
Well, this shouldn't be long because I'm liaising with the ACP just to verify we did all that we can. We did not abuse our authority, or if it is that we should have done more. But as I said, this is a very difficult situation for the police service. We are aware of what we need to do, but I cannot. And remember, we had a situation a few months ago when this started, when there were demands for me to arrest persons if they were jogging. I said we can't. When it is that I said that if persons were in large numbers outside banks or supermarkets, I would shut it down, and persons questioned that. And I said I would, and I couldn't, because of what action was taken could affect lives. So there would be different situations, but the situation with private property, it is a very delicate situation. I have to ensure that the police, as much as we want to do what is required to protect lives, we must not in any way abuse our authority.
This situation came to light sometime yesterday into this morning. Since then, has the Ttps spoken with either the Ministry of National Security and or the Ministry of Health to bring some sort of clarity on this particular issue?
Yes, I have spoken to the Attorney General, the Minister of Health, and the Minister of National Security.
And what is the clarity that they came up with?
I will wait until they speak to you about it.
Going back, sticking on this one last question. You made mention of this being different because in other instances people were warned and no arrests were made. Specifically to this, according to the article that I read, they were warned first via telephone, told to tell the people, and then police are coming. And then when the police arrived, they were warned again, and they was dispersed into groups of 5 to supposedly meet within the COVID regulations. And it still continued. So why wasn't any
well, remember, you are working this based on hearsay, based on a newspaper article. That's not what we could confirm. I could only do it based on the report, because to start with, a telephone call is not a warning. That's to start with. You don't use a telephone call to put that as a warning. When the police arrived, they would have known what took place, what transpired, and then they would have made a judgment call based on the peculiar nature of ensuring that we enforce the law, whilst also respecting private property. And if it is, we do not know if the persons they dispersed, if it is that they stayed in groups of 5, if the individuals remain were residents, which we will not be able to remove residents from the pool if it's private property. So, and again, we can't work, because if you look at the report kept saying a public place, which was not. So again, if you look at the heading itself, it all starts off with the usual song and dance that you will have from the Express, Hate the Police campaign, pool party and gated committee, cops called, but limers only get warning. Now, you know, the Express would not have done that with the Sea Lot situation when I was called and I gave them a warning, because that's not going to sell. If we could find a way to discredit the police and show the police didn't do their job, aka the Express, what they live on, find a way to discredit the police and find anything negative on police. So let's not get carried away. If you look at the comments she made constantly, public space, public space. It was not public space. So, but again, this is what is going to sell and give the impression to the public that the police was selective in how it is we deal with investigations, and we are not.
Going on.
Yeah, sir, 1 minute.
Just to bring some clarity to what you are trying to find out there, sir. Now, what caused the police to be there in the first place? Somebody made a report, and the police responded. Information I have, having gotten that this morning before coming here, is that the persons were spoken to on 2 occasions. On the first occasion, they dispersed, the police left, they came back and the police were called again. And on the second occasion, they were spoken to in a stronger manner, and they did disperse. The police was satisfied that the persons had dispersed. There was an interaction, a strong verbal interaction, and the persons dispersed. Now, had we been called again, as we would on the first and second occasion, we would have gone back. We were not called, and the person who called us really had the interest of many persons that had there. So we were not called, so we didn't have to respond again.
And just let me add again, with the police service, if persons feel that they can find a way to beat the system, I will find a way to beat them from beating the system. So I'll give you simple examples. In this investigation, we find out that what we heard is some of these individuals were not residents of Trinidad and Tobago. will check and realize whether it is that they have documentation to be here. And even if they do, persons can be removed from this country if you are deemed A, a threat to national security, or B, a liability to the public purse. So if persons feel that I can do what I want whenever I want, we can find avenues to make life very difficult for persons within the law.
Thank you. Noted. Two questions again for me, going on to the I Support Our Services. Who is in charge of this organization, if I can call it that?
Well, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, it is run primarily through the Corporate Communications Unit. So they are the ones that will receive all the cash, kind, goods, services from the different units, and then it will then be recorded, and it will then be given out to different agencies, different arms in the police service, or even to different organizations in certain places. So you will have citizen engagement initiative, things being given for children for Christmas caravan, things given to police officers to assist them. So there are a number of different things that will be given throughout the police service. So it is all documented through the corporate communication unit.
And any one person in particular is in charge of I Support Our Services?
Well, through the corporate communication unit, we can liaise with Mr. Francis Joseph and Mr. Sagani. Okay. And again, everything that is required, we make sure that everything I said. So we have the full list of all the companies, what has been given, and where we've distributed it to.
And how does the TTPS navigate the very thin line between the I Support Our Services and possible inducements given to the police officers?
Two totally different things, because if there's inducement, that's a crime. So, as it's done.
How do you differentiate between?
You don't. There's nothing. There's two totally different things. If I give you something to assist you, and then I try to bribe you, the bribery is a crime. That has nothing to do with what it is you provide. Because if that is the case, then we will try to say that nobody must give anything to the police service. All over the world is done. But if at any time there's something that pertains to bribery or corruption, that is a crime, and there's no link. So if it is that someone gets something through our investigation, through our fraud unit, FIB, even the PCA, that if someone was able to acquire a contract or got something by heavier markup, then that is a crime. So you can't link that unless it is you can have some evidence, witness to verify that this person did A on condition that he would get B. It's two totally different things. Because if that is the case, then no one would be able to provide anything and give anything to any organization, because it's possible that a crime will be committed.
And final question from me is, what measures in place to ensure that there won't be any conflicts of interest, given that some of these organizations may end up under the TTPS radar for whatever criminal offenses?
None whatsoever. If you look right now, in the last 18 months, never in the history of the police service have we been under so much scrutiny, but in the same manner, never in the history of the police service have we been so accountable, where 77 police officers have been suspended, 58 police officers have been charged. So it means that on any occasion, any organization, individual, firm, unit that would be involved in anything, they would be weighed, measured, and if it is that we have enough evidence that can, the intelligence that can turn into evidence, they would be arrested.
All right, good afternoon, gentlemen. Nika Personal here from Loop News. We raised an interesting discussion on public versus private spaces versus common areas in private spaces. I'm wondering if that's a general issue that we have. We have vacation rentals, weekend rentals, these guest houses near beaches and that sort of thing. Does that fall into that category? I know we can't have much clarity right now, but is there any you can provide to people who own these spaces on how to carry about their, I guess, activities with regards to renting to people?
Yeah, well, again, you're right. It is a case-by-case basis. So in some instances, we had a situation of a guest house, and the guest house was involved in dozens of Venezuelan women and little children involved in all types of activity. I actually led that operation, and they were all arrested. And then their defense would be, well, it's a guest house and it was private property. So we would take everything by a case-by-case basis, but I give the assurance that if we feel that someone is abusing that situation, we would, if Toronto Police Service, we would get involved. We are going to find our way to get involved in that situation. Remember, as a hotel, persons have access to come and go. The hotel has a responsibility and obligation and a degree of maturity and professionalism to ensure that they play their part to ensure the health and safety of citizens in this country.
Okay. There's an issue of public scrutiny with regards to this same Bayside issue versus the sea-lots and whoever else was bathing, wherever else. I think the difference is that even in cases where persons weren't charged or brought before the court for breaching the public health regulations, some of them were recorded and uploaded to social media by the TCPS or by other police officers or whatever the case might be, whereas in this case, that did not happen. So people are exposed to different forms of scrutiny based on what?
So the scrutiny is based on whether the police record it or not?
It happens, yes.
Not based on the fact that all those individuals were released in the same manner that individuals here were warned?
Well,
so the police are going to be tested based on if they record it or not. That is going to how the police service is going to be judged based on if it was recorded or not. Really?
They have been. That's part of the conversation.
I can't judge or speak on behalf of ignorant people. If you're going to judge the police service based on who did a recording or who did not do a recording, I mean, what am I to say with that? I can't defend or speak on behalf of stupidity.
Understood. Last topic from me, though. I want to discuss this Susu phenomenon that we've been facing. I know the FIU and the Ministry of Finance, they've all advised people against taking part of these things. However, there are many people who still fallen victim, and they would like to know what redress they can seek. And on the other side, the admins, what repercussions can they face, any at all? And what redress can they seek if they feel like they've been victimized in any way?
Like any other interaction, if you enter and you are aggrieved and you make a report, it will be investigated, and if persons are found culpable, then we take the necessary action within the ambits of the law.
Okay. I want to go back to a question by Jensen. The question by Jensen, it sums up the negativity and how it is that, I'm nothing against you, but I just want to show a point. We always find a way to find the worst in everything. So something that's done worldwide, where we're getting major organizations, persons want to contribute. They want to bring a bucket of paint to help paint the police station. That's seen, but it could be corruption. Well, Jensen, I will ask you, all of the advertisements that are put in the Newsday, can we then question the Newsday to say, but when you put all these companies that put advertisements in the Newsday, could it be that it's possible that you all will not make any negative comments about those organizations because they might be paying your bills? Is it possible? What is the Newsday doing about it to prevent Newsday from being corrupt and to prevent the Newsday from not abusing the system by making sure you have persons who advertise in the Newsday, and to make sure that when these persons advertise, if you all find something negative about them, you all will not do it. So maybe it is we should have some type of code. Is it possible? No comment.
Not going to answer.
I know you can't. You started moonwalk like Michael Jackson there, man.
Not going to answer, but I have more questions.
But you ask a question.
Yes.
It's possible, isn't it? So why not ask the same question for the media, that every advertising agency that goes in the media, you all can very well be abusing the system and deliberately sometimes even cause a competitor. So competitor A that sells paint to competitor B, they will put something and make you, because they're paying your bills, you can deliberately start to attack competitor B to help competitor B because they're paying your bills. But point being, we must stop being so small-minded and find negative in everything in life.
Noted. My question, going back to the recruits that were tested positive for COVID-19. I understand there were 43 initially. How many are there now?
It increased. Yeah, Mr. Follow, just clarify.
It was 43, it has increased. We have added about 30-something, about 38 or 39 more to that number.
Out of 120-something?
198.
198?
198.
Yes.
Jeez. Now, I understand that the training academy is listed as a learning institution, yes? Because
yes,
it's accredited by ACTT.
Yes, it is.
When the schools were closed, all learning institutions were supposed to have closed. my understanding is that the academy was still ongoing. Why was that?
Sorry, I missed that one. Say it again.
Yeah,
So the training academy, the police training academy is listed as a learning institution. Learning institutions were closed, and the police academy continued training throughout whilst other learning institutions were closed. Why was that?
Yeah, this was an essential service, and we got the relevant requisite permission from the Ministry of National Security to ensure. However, we had to ensure that we did certain elements, because remember, we're speaking about 200 police officers. We need as much as possible to get on the ground. So under a degree of national security. If you recall, we had the same situation when this first started, and we had the 198 recruits, and they were confined because they were safe, and we didn't want them to leave at that time. We got the approval. It is similar right now, where there would be exceptions. The Ministry of National Security, they have given us permission to train our police officers as we are about to launch the Coastal and Marine Patrol Unit. So you're not supposed to go in the water, but we need to have that type of training for the officers to get that Marine Patrol Unit out as quickly as possible to assist in securing our borders. So you would get certain exceptions made, but making sure that when we make that request, we must adhere to the regulations. Oh, I can't recall. I can get it for you.
Good afternoon all. Darren Baho, Newsday. I'd like to go back to the crime statistics, if you would allow me. For 2019, all of 2019, not up to August, we had 523 murders, which was the second highest in our nation's history. The statistics that we released today goes up to 2020 August, which shows just under 300. To date, I think it's just over 300.
No, 291.
Up to today's murder?
Yeah, 291.
All right, so 291. From the statistics that you have revealed, most of the other categories of crime, there has been an increase in the detection. In murders in particular, which is really a strong barometer which the public judges the police service ability to deal with the most serious crime, there's been a 2% increase in detection. Have you placed appraisals or given targets to your divisional commanders to bring that number much higher? And are they all performing as you like them to?
Well, there will always be room for improvement, but as we stated, over the last 5 years, we have been seeing a constant and gradual increase in crime, in every single crime. Now, for the first time, we're seeing a gradual decrease in every single crime. August, in fact, 22 murders in August. I think it was the lowest number of murders in the last probably 5 years or so. That was the last month. It is not just because of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and that's always a bad thing. When things go good, everyone gets the credit. When things go bad, you blame the police service. This has to do with a number, several other things, as well as the public, people just being a little more mature. So it is not just the police will be cause. And likewise, if this crime goes up, the police are not the only ones that will be cause for crime going up. When crime increased, we will look at our UK international experts. They came to Trinidad and Tobago, and when they explain about the detection rate, we will go on similar line to what is seen in Chicago and other places. When you have gang-related murders, it is virtually, a lot of time, not non-existent. You're not going to get any witnesses. The only time you get any witnesses on any shooting is if a police officer is involved. Sometimes there'll be a gang-related. I think sometimes I should say that police were involved, and then all of a sudden the lady in the towel, balling only two wicked posse, they will all come and say that they saw, because they only see when police officers are involved, but they don't see when. So in gang-related, based on fear, based on reprisal, based on committee trying to protect criminal elements, certain people in the community, they will not see anything. So without witnesses, a drive-by shooting, that concept of what we speak about detection rate, it is not as a situation in a room where you can have DNA testing, you can have certain things that you can pick up and pinpoint to try to link that person to the crime. When you have a drive-by shooting 2 o'clock in the morning and no one wants to speak, you have no evidence on the scene, it makes it very difficult. So you have these similar situations with a very low detection rate for that type of crime when you are in Colombia, Mexico, Venezuela, Central America, South America, Chicago. Anytime you have gang-related, everyone goes silent. And if it is that there's no witness, there's no evidence, there's no DNA or anything, the police cannot solve such a crime overnight. It is very difficult. So having said that, what we're trying to get now, again, by the public giving us information but not sticking their neck out, we're getting that, and it is helping.
Commissioner, on that same point, has the police service, or is the police service using confidential informants or undercover officers to infiltrate these criminal gangs to be proactive in solving crime and getting gang leaders?
Why would I ever inform the media public of what I am doing based on intelligence? Really? I would not do that. I would not state what I am doing and what I am not doing.
Okay, I would like to shift back just to the ISOS for a short bit. Let's now ask a couple of questions in relation to the quid pro quo. And I would like to, are you screening the donors, and is there a cap on how much one can give?
Well, what we have, it is not to say that we're getting millions from it. We are talking about a bucket of paint, sometimes some masks, some gifts for children to give for their Christmas function. So it is not in any way. I see where you're going on this. Yeah, obviously we'll be very vigilant to make sure that persons don't submit en masse in the hope that there can be some expectation in the future. But what we are getting, it's our items, more than anything else, items that can assist in the improvement of the police service, whether it be PPE equipment, masks, something to assist in improving the police service or the police station, giving things back through the police service to give to the communities, to give to persons in need. So those are the items that the vast majority has been that. So obviously, and as I said, we register all, and then obviously we will monitor to make sure that there's no link with that company into something that they may be tendering for, to make sure that there's going to be no link to give them some degree of preference.
Right. Again, Jensen touched on this with the police academy, but how has the COVID pandemic affected the human resource of the police service generally? And what is your plan B if more and more officers keep falling?
It is virtually crippling us. It doesn't make it easier when someone decides to send a letter to ask for all the CCTVs over the last 3 months in 5 different locations, or ask about, they want to get all the station diary extracts, or to get all the information pertaining to the shoe size and the waist size of every police officer, and what is the ethnic composition and how many boyfriends they have. So these things make it much more difficult for us to do our work. And then with the situation with COVID, when one police officer is down, there's not just one. Because if that one police officer is in a station, it could be dozens of police officers. So it becomes a domino effect. So the officers, they are tired, they are working, they are doing all that is required. But then what we get is the thing, let's keep the hate police campaign going. It really is unfair to my officers.
All right. Maybe Mr. Chandler might be more a better position to answer this question. In relation to the high numbers of FOI requests that you provided, how many of them have been approved, how many of them have been turned down, and how many of them are in court?
All right, well, I could, before he hands over, did we have over 25,000 applications for FUL? Right, so it is heavy. As it pertains to the FOI, you would have seen thousands as well. But as it pertains to firearms license alone, we have thousands. And then I get requests and demands and pre-action protocol letter. So it makes it very difficult. Mr. Chairman, you could go.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. Darren, to answer your question, the statistics relative to the question, I don't have those specifically with me to answer the question directly. So what I could say is, in terms of the requested items, I could say that I think I could safely say that the majority of the requests are actually approved generally, because the spirit, and when we look at what the law is generally provides for the information. The challenge is the time frames, right? The timelines and providing information. So we have it broken down to within the 30 days, between 31 to 60, between 61 to 90, and over 90. Therein lies the problem, because I'm going to have to, I don't want to mislead you in terms of the numbers for the judicial review matters that have been filed. But what we find happening is that, so when we respond to a letter for a request, and we realize that the time is going to expire, we indicate to the applicant that, look, the time is about to expire and we need an extension of time. Thereafter, we try to supply the information within that specific time. Sometimes we may not get it within that time and we have to ask for an extension again. People sometimes cannot wait. They go and file the judicial review. For what reason? I don't know. I don't know what is the information that's so important that they need it right away. Some instances, yes, I could see the need for it urgently, and we do try our best to get the information. But, I mean, it is resources to go and get people to go in and find the information, make copies and that sort of thing. So it is a lot because it's archives that they're asking them to go into.
Yeah. And again, going back to the FOI, the ideal thing is that it should stick to what it was there for, to ensure public accountability, scrutiny, finances. But to reach on this fishing expedition, as I said, 10 reports we get per day, every day for the year. When you multiply it by 3 other officers for a couple of days, it's over 7,000 plus hours every month that I lose in manpower hours.
On the issue of domestic violence related murders, there is legislation which I believe has been passed in the House for electronic tagging, ankle bracelets and so forth. And there's been a long complaint from women in particular who report police stations to say, listen, I'm a victim of domestic violence. And police officers would say, this is before the formation of the gender-based violence unit, of course, that this is a matter between husband and wife, go home and sort it out, and no report has been filed. In many of those instances, situations escalate, and it leads to maybe violence, maybe murder, and other types of crimes. What is the message to women now who are possibly going through a situation of domestic violence? And what is your message to them to get help and to get out of those relationships, even if the courts are saying go back into your home and live with your abusive spouse?
Act now before it is too late. The fact is that previously I can't change what happened prior to my tour of duty. On my watch, the truly gender-based violence unit, you now have that window of opportunity. Use it. Do not wait until it is too late. And it is not just the victims, Darren, because the victims at times, based on intimidation, based on fear, they may not act. But you have this is the one value of Trinidad and Tobago being a macro society. Everybody likes to peep the window and look at people's business. So you hear it, you see it. Whether it is the neighbors, the employees, the family members, the friends. Too often we have seen situations where the person is killed and then you're hearing everybody attacking the police. And when we check, not one report was made. But everybody with this camera in the office, yes, we knew this was going on for years. Neighbors said, yes, I was hearing all this going on for years, but you never made a report. So it is not just for the victims now to know that this is the time to act before it is too late, but for the neighbors, the family members, the friends, the employees. Speaking about it to get on television after the fact serves no purpose. The person is now dead. You have a part to play. Now it's time for people to speak out, speak up. And we are doing what is required, but as again, it is much more. It's much more than the police. We can arrest the individual, and then he gets next to nothing in bail within a few hours. The sentence is very low. And now you're getting protection orders, restraining orders, protection orders by telling the person, okay, you must not hit the lady again. That is not good enough. So when we speak about the bigger picture, do not use the police service as a band-aid over a national problem, a national crisis. We are doing our part with all the number of things that I have stated, but as I said, the majority of the persons who have been killed, we never got a report. So we can only act based on the information we get, and we are doing a lot. We now have database, we are filing through the ERP when a report is made. The police officer can now go to the home prior to his arrival. He will now know that there have been 2 reports of domestic violence already. So he has the database up front. He knows this person has a firearm user's license. This is where technology comes in to assist us in dealing with this type of crime.
And finally, do you have projected figures for serious crimes, these same serious crimes that you displayed here, as to what you would expect the end of year figures to be, and how you would let your divisional commanders ensure that these figures remain as low as possible?
Well, we have ComStat on a weekly basis. We look at the crime, we analyze it, we try to measure performance, we try to utilize our resources of the police service in an effective and efficient manner. And again, I can't give the assurance that every single year there's going to be a 25% reduction in murders. Things will happen. We are doing all that we can. I give that the assurance to the public. But it's much more than just the police. We are not the be-all and end-all to reduce or that may cause the increase in crime. I try to keep a very high standard. This is a very effective and professional police service, and the officers out there, they're doing all that they can. I give you that assurance.
Vivian Bowen, CL Communications. Coming to the Guinean situation, Mr. Chandler, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I read somewhere actually, if the judge in the case who summed up the case basically said that he thinks the information asked were of some public importance, was important for the public to know. And how do you comment on that, considering that that was the judge who summed up the case?
How do I comment on it? Well, at the end of the day, the matter is concluded. The judge has summed up the matter, as you said, and given his judgment in the matter. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we concur, or that I concur, with the findings of the court. And to that avail, we are exploring very voraciously the issue of filing an appeal. Because when I look at what was filed, because you have to understand something. Judicial review is a remedy of its own, and the application will set out what you are looking for, what you are asking for. It must be specific in nature. And what was filed and what was the judgment, there's a gap. And so what I see is the court filling that gap. So to that to that extent, sorry, I'm saying that I don't believe that everything that has been set out in there is quite right. It seems that, in my opinion, that the law is pertaining to freedom of information is constantly being expanded, right? And that is what we need to be careful with, because boundaries and limits need to be set in terms of, well, how far we can go in terms of the request. Otherwise, as Commissioner, that's the short of what Commissioner is saying, you know, look, at what point in time you're going to draw the line? You could have anything, everything. You know, so we need to understand that there must be some limit. And the constant expansion means, therefore, that every time that a court decides, that's it. So we need some guidelines. And so we would want to get that guidelines. And perhaps the best place to look for it is a higher court of jurisdiction.
And let me clarify, this is not in any way that the police have anything to hide. I am very transparent because we have nothing. I will provide anything at any time. But my point being is that this is affecting the police service in our operational capability, because every Tommy and Denny's wants to send any request. And when is it going to end? You're going to ask every police officer what's their favorite movie, how many times, what's your driver's permit number. When is the level of it being ridiculous going to stop? And at the expense of me trying to put out police officers out on the streets, especially in this situation with the COVID pandemic, where officers are going down, they're tired, we are overworked, we've been going on for the last year non-stop. We have to continue to do patrols, monitor persons because of a pandemic, to lock down the country, and I have to be losing several thousand manpower hours every single month to try to find somebody who wanted to find out if a boyfriend worked that day in Point 14, or because I got in a car accident, you must go and find all the camera footage over the last few months, or take all the stationary extracts that we have to go and hunt and find, which is also affecting citizens from giving information, because they know that the Freedom of Information Act can actually implicate them, affect them, expose them. So I have to open the Pandora's box now and ask persons who understand that the FOIA is something that is very critical, very important for public scrutiny and accountability, but it is being abused.
I understand that correctly, and I agree with the point, especially when you made with 30 days. I think that is a very relevant point. But considering that she is also an investigative journalist, wouldn't she argue the same thing what you are arguing there, that she would not reveal why she is asking for certain information?
Well, then that's what she could ask. But I want all the police officers, the shoe size. I would like to know what school they went to in primary school, because I can't tell you, as an investigator, I'm not supposed to tell you why I'm asking that. So you can ask everything. What was the height of the police officers, how many boyfriends they had, and she could use it on so what you said makes sense. So she will just use that under the impression that is an investigator, so I can't really tell you why I'm asking for it. As ridiculous, far-fetched, as a fishing expedition as it can be.
Fair enough. Next question. Under the public health ordinance, how many persons have been charged for the mask wearing so thus far and the public gathering?
So far, I can give you mask wearings from last week Friday to present. 179 persons have been charged so far. What I want to impress is that is 179 persons multiplied by $1,000. So I really want to exhort to the population that, as uncomfortable as you feel it might be, study those $1,000 that you have to expend just because you want to be rebellious. $1,000 for rebellion? It doesn't make sense to me.
All right, well, final question. The Commissioner, can you just explain to us the process of a second divisional officer getting promoted? Are you comfortable with that process, or are you looking to review that process at all?
It is being reviewed. We are actually looking at it. Again, I need to find systems to measure performance, make persons accountable, and not just use the priority of seniority being the main element towards promotion. It must be based on performance. And by doing that, it can cause even junior officers who may feel that I need to spend decades before I can reach somewhere. If it is that I know that I'm a high flyer based on certain situations, I can actually move and have it focused based specifically or primarily based on seniority by what time of the, which year I was sworn in as a police officer. So it is being reviewed as we speak.
So presently it is basically on seniority? No,
it's not. No, the exams and other elements that take place, but I think we can do much more, get some high flyers, because what happens at times is that we lose many good police officers. They get frustrated, they feel that the process is too slow, they leave, they become attorneys, they go out in the private sector. So we lose very good officers because of frustration. I do not want to lose the good ones. I want to get rid of the bad ones.
One final question, Mr. Ford. I think I was going to ask a similar question pertaining to the murder, but I was looking through just now quickly, and I saw violent crimes. I can't remember the exact thing, but it was violent crimes. Was murder included in that violent crime?
Violent crime involves murder, rape, kidnapping, grievous bodily harm. So there's about 5 different categories for violent crime. Pardon? And murder, yes, yeah. Okay, that's it. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.